Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a companion video. Now, what are companion videos? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. You see, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we save the second half of the show to take live questions from the audience. However, we don't always have time to get around to all the live questions that get sent in, but I want to make sure those questions get answered properly in the video, so I gather up those unused questions and we address them here on companion videos. So that's what we're going to do right now. Let's not waste any time and let's dive right into it. And we're going to start getting caught up here with Anthony Lucalano, who writes in, "Upon 'tis beauteous night, I, Sir Antonius, thou hath chosen to watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail for the first time. Sorry for the medieval lingo. What a great, like everything from the start with the coconuts, everything about that movie is gold classic. I'm glad you had a chance to start getting caught up on that, man. All right, Sky Amazing Guy writes in, "Hey John, just wondering if you use OBS at all for your live streams. I just started live streaming and using OBS and I absolutely love it. I do use OBS from time to time, sometimes when I do play-in chats. Sometimes when I do play-in chats and all I need is just a simple streamer and stuff like that, OBS is perfect. I actually use a version of OBS called Streamlabs OBS or Slobs. Streamlabs OBS is the one I will use from time to time. However, I need a more advanced, more capable piece of streaming software. I mean, that OBS is great. If you're just like video game streamers and Twitch people, OBS is fantastic. It is the staple for a lot of Twitch streamers. However, for somebody like myself, you know what? I still have today's show stuff all lined up and ready to go here. So for me and myself, let me see if I can bring up something here. I'll just bring up, I don't know, I will bring up my Facebook page here, okay? For just something for me and myself, like when I need to be able to quickly go back and forth between things like bringing up images I'm talking about, transitioning to that, then bringing up a new image, going in a side-by-side image with me and one of my guests. Obviously, I don't have another guest right here, so that's there. From transitioning to that, whole bunches of other different things and be able to go right to something like this. I mean, all the stuff that, and that's just a basic, there's a lot of underneath the hood stuff that I do with Wirecast. Wirecast is a much more advanced and more capable thing. Now, the difference is, of course, is that OBS is a free piece of software. So if you're looking at streaming and you're just going to do some simple streaming, then OBS is awesome. Like I said, I even use Streamlabs OBS once in a while for my game streaming. But if you want to do anything more complex and needs a little bit more capability, then you need something like Wirecast. But the difference is Wirecast isn't free. Like the pro version of Wirecast, which is the one that I have, will run you close to $1,000. But it all depends on what your needs are. I think for 85% of the people out there looking at doing some simple streaming, OBS is perfect. OBS is perfect, and it's great. So that's a good thing to use. All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. Okay, next up. Superman Steve writes, "John, what did you love most about being on set for The Incredible Hulk? Aaron, what is it you love most about acting?" Well, unfortunately, Aaron's not here right now. "Love this show so much. One of my favorite parts of my day, literally." Well, thank you so much for that, Superman Steve. I think, you know, Hulk wasn't the first movie I was an extra on. I was an extra in about 8 or 9 different movies. But one of the things I love most about that on-set experience is just there's something magical about being on set of a big movie. When you're a major movie fan, like many of you are and like I am, there's something magical about being there on set. It's also incredibly boring. Being on set for a long, because 90% of the time on a movie set is hurry up and wait. But it's crazy. I think specifically my favorite part about the Hulk experience was the uniform. Getting dressed up in the uniform was pretty cool. So that was my favorite one with that. Anyway, thanks, Superman Steve, for the kind words, and I appreciate that, man. All right, Anthony Lucalano writes, "Sir Antonius has just finished watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail. 'Twas a good moving picture it was. Now on to Monty Python's Life of Brian." You'll also really like Life of Brian. I prefer Holy Grail, though. Like I said, I talked about it earlier. Like, there's so much memorable, quotable, amazing things in that movie. It's so silly, but that was Monty Python, right? Monty Python was all about being silly. But that is just one of the great classics. I'm glad you had a chance to watch that, Anthony. All right. Diamond Dog's Puppy writes, Hey, John, which film was the scariest movie theater experience that you remember? Mine was From Dusk Till Dawn. That was a pretty good one. My mom took me to see it and told me it was a Tarantino Western prequel to Reservoir Dogs. When they went to the bordello, oh boy, yeah, your mom was a little deceiving to you there in many ways. Listen, my scariest movie of all time is still American Werewolf in London. I've talked about that movie a lot. A lot of people know that. That to me is my all-time favorite horror movie. It's also the most terrifying movie I've ever seen. However, I didn't see that one on the big screen. Yeah, I think I was too young when it came out to go see it in theaters. So I didn't get to see that on big screen. The movie I did see on the big screen was The Descent. And that movie is terrifying. At least to me. Like most horror movies, I can really enjoy a good horror movie, but the vast majority of them don't scare me. Like, they're just good experiences, though. They're good fun. They're fun thrill rides. But I don't, frankly, get scared at many of them. For whatever reason, American Werewolf in London and The Descent absolutely terrify me. And I can't explain why or how, but that's just mine. So overall, American Werewolf in London, but in theater, The Descent. And that was even before the monsters show up. Like, just being there cave diving terrified me. It was crazy. All right, thanks for that, Diamond Dog. An anonymous viewer just sent in a $10 tip. Thank you so much, anonymous viewer, just to be supportive. We appreciate that, man. J-Man Lawn writes, last night I saw Godfather for the first time. It's amazing how many people during this lockdown are writing in and saying they've watched The Godfather now for the first time. That is awesome. Well done. For the first time, and wow, just wow, absolute masterpiece. Can't believe I didn't see it sooner. No problem, but now you get to move on to The Godfather Part 2. And by the way, as much as Godfather Part 3 catches a lot of flack from people, fact of the matter is, it's a really great movie in its own right, too. Minus Coppola's daughter, but whatever. And it was also nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. All three Godfather films nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Part 1 and Part 2 both won. But go on to Part 2. There are many people who think that Godfather Part 2 might be the greatest film ever made. But leave that up to you to decide. I think you'll at least enjoy it. All right. Where are we at here? Wesley Cunningham writes, with theaters living on that razor-thin margin you mentioned, and now with them in real danger, will studios rethink arrangements like Disney keeping 100% of the ticket price for the first week or so on Star Wars films, help ensure the life of their distributors? Listen, I've been saying, and the industry has been saying for a long time, there needs to be a fundamental shift in just the whole paradigm of how the relationship between studios and theaters work. Studios keep more and more and more of the ticket revenue, leaving less and less and less for the theaters that then have to rely more and more and more on concession stand sales. And that's why a bag of popcorn costs $6 and whatever, because the studios keep every year keeping more and more and more of it, to the point that there are some big films where studios will basically hang the theaters out to dry and say, we're keeping 100% of the first weekend box office. And if you don't like it, then you don't get to play our movie. And of course, the theaters need those movies. So yeah, I really do hope that something like this will scare the studios into realizing we need to make sure our theatrical partners are healthy. Because if they go down, that's going to cost us billions of dollars. So I really do hope it causes some people to wake up and realizes there needs to be some kind of a shift. But how small or how drastic, I'm not sure. But something needs to be done, Wesley. I certainly hope it causes some people to act. All right. Elijah Anderson writes, yesterday I read an article about Cinemark planning to reopen in July with Tenet as one of its new films. So either Warner Brothers is sticking to their guns, or more likely it's another Soul situation. Stay safe. I think it's another Soul situation, to be honest with you. I really do. I just don't see, despite best intentions, I just don't see Tenet opening on its scheduled date. I think because even if theaters do open on those days, they didn't have a proper marketing campaign. It's going to take some, while many people like me will rush back to the theaters, there's going to be also a number of people who want to be more cautious and be more slow in going back into the theaters. And all those things just add up to, I can't see Tenet still being there. I do think there is a possibility, by the way, that these movies, the movie theaters can be open in July, but we don't know that yet. So it makes things really precarious at runtime. All I know this is, Elijah, is that I hope it's true. I mean, I just can't see a scenario in which Tenet does open in July, but I would love it if it did. I would love it if the theaters were open and the curve had flattened and started to dip and we'd be in a little bit of a safer position. I would still be cautious going to theaters. I'd probably still sanitize. I might even wear my mask to the theater. I don't know, but I would love it if it did, but only if it's deemed by the medical community to be safer now and all that kind of stuff. But it would be great. I just can't see it happening though. But here's hoping. Fingers crossed, Elijah. All right, let's see. Next up here, we have Jesse, who writes, "Hey, John, did you catch the season finale of Chicago PD last night? What an ending. Can't wait to see where it goes from here." I did not. No, I always watch shows like the next day. It's very, very, very rare that I watch TV shows the night they air. I usually watch them the next day or two afterwards, like on Hulu or on one of the streaming services. Even though I have YouTube TV, I could watch it live if I want to. I just can't plan my life around and schedule when to be in front of the TV. So I plan on watching that sometime today because Chicago PD is one of the shows that I do watch. I don't watch any of the other Chicago shows, but I like Chicago PD mainly because I like the lead actor in that. So no, haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. All right, next up, Inky Diesel writes, "Hey, John, long time, first time. Thanks for being here, Inky. Appreciate that. Just wanted to reach out and say thanks for bringing back the podcast version of your show. As a truck driver, it's much easier to listen to your awesome show rather than having to bring it up on YouTube. Bring on the filthy." Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Inky. And like I said, a lot of thanks do go to our Patreon supporters. And, you know, I'm going to share this with our Patreon supporters because I've gotten some messages and some emails sent to me from people specifically asking me to thank our Patreon supporters. People who, for one reason or the other, really aren't in a position where they can watch the daily show, but they would love to listen to it on podcast. And of course, the only reason we were able to bring the podcast back is because our Patreon supporters, because the audio-only version podcast was exclusively for our Patreon supporters. But back in 2019, our Patreon supporters said near the end of the year, release it to everybody. Go ahead. Seriously, release it to everybody. We're not here for the perks. We're Patreon supporters just because we want to support the channel. By all means, if it makes it easier for other people, release the podcaster version. And our Patreon supporters were amazing that way. And I've actually gotten thank you messages. For those of you who are Patreon supporters, I've actually gotten thank you messages from people thanking the Patreon supporters for allowing us to release this podcast. And it's always good to hear that it makes it easier for you. So thank you for being a listener or a viewer whenever you can, Inky. And thanks for sending in the message, man. I really appreciate it. All right. Domestic House Cat writes, one of two. I appreciate tonal shifts in movies and don't understand the complaints against them. Real life doesn't have a distinct tone either after all. Likewise, I don't get the need for absolute immersion. Probably just me, but if immersion breaks, I just smile and put my brain back in the movie. Here's the thing, Domestic House Cat. Tonal shifts are fine, but they're like anything else in a movie. Like a joke. A joke can be great, but a joke might be put in the wrong place and used at the wrong time and be very jarring to the film. A joke is neither good nor bad. It can just have great effect if used right. It can have negative effect if used badly and at the wrong time. I think tonal shifts in a movie are just like that. It's just another tool. A tonal shift is just another tool in a filmmaker's tool belt. But there are ways to do it that can amplify the experience. For instance, take a little film I've been talking a lot lately with Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively called A Simple Favor that came out, I think it was 2018, 2019. I can't remember. I think it was 2018, but it might have been 2019. Anyway, it's a brilliant movie. I love it. It's super engaging and fun, but there are like 5 or 6 massive tonal shifts in the movie and actually just complete genre shifts in the movie. But they're done in a really great way that just flows with the narrative, and it's fantastic. Then there are movies that don't do it the right way. So I'm with you. A tonal shift in a movie in and of itself is not a bad thing, but like anything else, it can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. It all depends on how and when it's used. Much like immersion, stuff like that, like Deadpool takes you out of the immersion of the movie all the time with his fourth wall breaking, but it's an appropriate use of it, and therefore in that context it works, and there are others that it does as well. So again, it all depends on the individual situation, man. It all depends on the individual situation. All right, Domestic House Cat also writes, by the way, Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat is not a brainless button masher. Materia system is still there, and magic limits, items, and strategy remain. I get it, but part of the thing that I loved about Final Fantasy was their at the time, very unique turn-based system. And there was just something really cool about it that I loved a lot. Like every other game, it's just real-time combat. Like every other game is real-time combat. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Like, now granted, I haven't played the Final Fantasy VII Remaster yet, and I will give it a try. I was just I was very excited about this game, and then very turned off when I started watching the reviews, and they mentioned that that turn-based, that classic turn-based system that they used was gone, and that kind of turned me off. But I'll give it a try at some point. I will give it a try at some point. All right. Alton7771 writes, John, if you want movie recommendation and unrated murder mystery, I think you meant underrated, murder mystery, watch Identity. Oh, we were talking about Identity just a couple weeks ago with John Cusack. Yeah, it's a wonderful movie. Murder mystery, watch Identity with John Cusack and Ray Liotta. It came out in 2003. It's a wonderful little film. I like Identity. I gotta admit, I'm not big on the ending. But much like what's that Christopher Nolan film? Prestige. I love Prestige, but I don't like the ending. I don't like the very ending of Prestige. It does not work for me. The whole Hugh Jackman reveal thing doesn't really work for me, but that doesn't take away my love for the overall movie. I'm kind of like that with Identity as well. I'm not a big fan of the ending of it, but I do like it all as a whole. If you guys haven't watched it yet, take Alton's advice and check it out. All right. Emmanuel Okanaki. And I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. I'm terrible with names. Sorry about that. Anyway, Emmanuel writes, Black Mirror, Sex Education, Russian Doll, John won't watch. No, actually, I'm very interested in watching Sex Education and Russian Doll. It's just, I just don't have time. I've got so much stuff on my list. I have very, very, very few shows that I watch regularly. Then I have a few shows that I try to get caught up on. And then there's a few others that I'm interested in. I just don't know when I'm going to get around to them. I've seen 1 or 2 episodes of Black Mirror, whatever. I know it works for a lot of people, and maybe I'm just missing out on some good episodes, but I am very interested in Sex Education and Russian Doll, though. All right. Cleric John Preston writes, Hey, John, I think I've heard you say that you are a fan of The Expanse. I am. I really like that show. I was a little late to the game on it, but I had so many people telling me it was so good. I finally tried it out, and I'm so glad that I did. I really like that show. I personally love the show with my favorite character being Amos. I love the Amos character. He's great, and he just keeps getting better every season. Anyway, I just realized that he is in the cast of Tenet. I did not know that, and wanted to bring this to your attention. Cannot wait to see it. See, one of the things that I love about Amos is that in a sci-fi futuristic world, he is a very 1980s, 1990s character, right? He's just the loyal muscle. He's like the loyal muscle, but there's more to his character than that as well. He's got some of my favorite moments actually in Expanse is some of his dialogue moments. Like, he has got a very black and white way of looking at the world. And in a show that is very much about the gray, sometimes getting Amos in there with a very black and white view is sometimes really refreshing to the show. Too much just black and white view makes for a boring show. But when it's used as the accent in a character, it works so well. And I really love the character. And I had no idea, Cleric. I had no idea that he was in Tenet. That just makes me even more excited for the show now. So thanks for sharing that, dude. All right, next up. Drummer0626 writes, do you think Warner Brothers should wait to launch HBO Max? I'm excited for it, considering millions of people may not want to drop a starting base of $15 on yet another streaming service at this time. Thanks a lot for saying that in, Drummer. And actually, somebody else asked a very identical question to this not too long ago. And I'll tell you what I told them at the time. Yes, now is the time to launch it, and I'll tell you why. Because of exactly what you just said. There are going to be people that are apprehensive about spending money on yet another streaming service. But the longer you wait, the more and more streaming services there are going to be, and it's just going to be even worse. You've got to get in on this game as early as you can. Because, for instance, Quibi just launched, right? Another, what is it, $8 a month service, whatever. I don't know how many people are actually going to sign up for it, but because they didn't get out first, some people now also sign up to Quibi. And now they have yet another service they're paying for, and there's still no HBO Max. The longer HBO Max waits to come out, the more other streaming services are going to come out, and they're going to vie for people's dollars, and then it's going to be even worse. So now is the best time. Actually, 6 months ago was the best time for HBO Max to launch, but there will never be a better time than today. Tomorrow won't be as good of a time for them to launch as it is today. The day after that will not be as good of a day as tomorrow, and so on and so forth. Exactly because of what you said. That people are going to be frugal. So the longer you wait and the more services people are signed up to, it's just going to make it even harder. I think you got to get out there now. So I think they should launch as soon as possible. That's just my take on that, drummer. Thanks for the question, man. All right, Ryan Lohner writes, Joss Whedon directing John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. I guess it's not, I guess it's not much of a stretch. I'll give you a little drum hit on that. Doom. There you go. I'll give you a little bit of a drum hit on that, Ryan. All right, Dumbledore Calrissian writes, I was so happy to hear you recommend that people watch Fringe. Oh, it's such a good show. Not every episode was great, but I mean, I really did like the show. Too many people have not seen it, I agree. And it is one of my favorites. To me, they found a great balance between serialized and Monster of the Week, which I really appreciate. Oh, I agree. See, actually, I would often compare Fringe actually to Supernatural because of that balance between serial and procedural, right? That whole balance there, it's a little bit of both. And I really appreciated it on that level. And it was a fun little show. It was a really, and by the way, I forget the Anna Torv, is that her? Anyway, the lead girl from Fringe, she's also the lead actress on like one of the 3 lead characters on Mindhunter, which may be canceled now, but she's great in Mindhunter. I love that too. Another show not enough people watched. But anyway, I agree. Fringe was really great, Dumbledore. All right, Secular Monk writes, have you heard of Zeph? I don't even know how to pronounce that. He is being interviewed on SCN. I have no idea what we're talking about. So no, I've never heard of that individual, not in the least. Sorry about that. I should look into that. All right. Lycon Zero writes, I just heard that Deborah Ann Wool from Daredevil hasn't had work in over 2 years. That's not true. Since the show ended, why do you think that is the case? Well, that's not true at all. Deborah Ann Wool, so she was the, I forget the name of the character. She was the secretary. She started off as the secretary. She was Fozzie's love interest. Then she was Matt's love interest. Then she was Punisher's love interest. She's everybody's love interest. Anyway, I'm surprised they didn't make her Rosario Dawson's love interest too. That being as it may. I liked her in the show. I did. But it's not, that she hasn't had work since Daredevil is not true at all. I mean, she was just in that little horror movie just last year called Escape Room. So she was in that, and that came out after Daredevil. She was in another show, and then she also did Punisher, which was after Daredevil. And then she did this, she was like one of the masters. She's a D&D geek, which is one of the things I really like about her. She did this other show called Relics and something or other. And I don't know much about it off the top of my head either, but there was that as well. So yeah, she has done stuff since Daredevil ended. But at the same time, she's not a big major name. Like, she's not Amy Adams. She's not a big, like, you could say the name and most people won't even know who that is. But she still has had a better career than 99% of the actors in Hollywood right now. But she's not a big, huge major name. And so she is still an actress who's in that position that she's got to work for any role she gets, because every role she's going out for, there's 500 other actresses going out for. I mean, it's a really, really tough business. Which is one of the reasons why I have infinite amounts of respect for actors and what they put themselves through. But yeah, but she has worked. Oh yeah, she's worked in the last 2 years. Like, that much I know. All right. Anyway, next up, Grow Tigers writes, Garo Tigers, whatever, Go Tigers. Did you hear about the Chuck Reed through tomorrow? Looks like they have the whole cast. Yes, they do. Actually, there's a friend of mine so on the show Chuck, there was Chuck and his best friend. A friend of mine and Aaron Cummings, whose name is Amy, she married the dude who plays Chuck's best friend in the show. And I really like, by the way, that guy was also on Lucifer. Amy's husband was actually did a guest spot on Lucifer once, which I instantly recognized, like, oh my God. Anyway, so yeah, I did hear about this. I don't know how many of the cast got back. I saw Zach Levi's announcement that they were doing it. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see that. I think it's a great idea during this time of lockdown and everything. I think it's a great idea. I'm excited to see that. All right. Nicholas Sergey writes, recommend Scent of a Woman. Oh, with Al Pacino. Hoo-ha. I mean, yeah, that's a classic, great movie. Absolutely. Everybody should watch that. Let me look this up. Did Al Pacino, I know Al Pacino at least got nominated for that. But did he win? I think he might have won an Academy Award for that. Hold on a second. Let me bring this up. He won Best Actor in a Leading Role for Scent of a Woman. Yep, there it is. I knew he was nominated for that, but I couldn't remember if he had won. But yes, he actually won. I believe it's the only Academy Award he's ever won. He has been nominated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for The Godfather. He was nominated for Best Actor in Serpico, Best Actor in a Leading Role in The Godfather Part 2, Best Actor in a Leading Role for Dog Day Afternoon, Best Actor in a Leading Role in Justice for All, Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Dick Tracy, Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Glengarry Glen Ross, Best Actor for a Leading Role, which he won for Scent of a Woman, and then Best Performance by an Actor for his first Academy Award nomination in 17 years. 17 years. No, 20-something years. 27 years. Al Pacino's first Academy Award nomination in 27 years for Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role in The Irishman. And he's only won one. I didn't even realize that. It's been 27 years since he was nominated for an Academy Award. It's crazy how many times he's been nominated. Anyway, good recommendation, Nicholas. Okay, next up, Alpha O writes, John, even when it's one's own property, there is such thing as self-censorship. Semantics. Self-censorship is a completely different thing from censorship, just as much as murder is a very different thing from suicide. Well, it's self-murder. Yeah, semantics. It's two different things. Self-censorship and censorship are completely different things. Anyway, I understand your view, but per the definition of it, oh no, you're wrong about that. As per the definition of it, this definitely counts as censorship. It absolutely does not. You can look it up. Now, whether it should or shouldn't bother people is another thing. Okay, let's do that. Because censorship is when you are being prohibited. Hold on a second. Definition. Okay, hold on a second. All right. Censorship. Here we go. Censorship. Let me see if I can bring it up here on the screen. I don't know if I can. You may or may not be able to see it. Here it is. The suppression or prohibition of any parts of books, films, news that are considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or a threat to security. Suppression or prohibition. Disney was not suppressed. Disney was not prohibited by anybody. They made a choice freely, without prohibition and without outside influence and without suppression. They made a choice about their own property of something to do with it. That is not censorship. The definition of censorship is when you are prohibited, sanctioned, or suppressed. Disney was not prohibited, sanctioned, or suppressed. It was all done of their own free will. Now, you paint your house white. That doesn't mean you're censoring the color blue. No, it's your house. You made a choice. I want my house to be white. So I painted it from blue to white. I'm not censoring the color blue. That's my choice. Now, if some government dude came along to you and said, you with your blue house, there is no freedom of free expression here. You must paint your house white. Paint your house white. You are forced. I am censoring you to do this. Well, that becomes a censorship in a way. I'm using hyperbole here, obviously. But by definition, self-censorship is not censorship any more than suicide is not murder. You can use the same words if you want. It's self-murder. It's still a completely different thing. So no, no, by definition, Disney Now, you don't have to like it. I mean, I'm not sure that I like it, to be honest with you. I'm not 100% sure that I like it. I'm not sure that I like it either, but I don't have a problem with it because it's not censorship, right? Disney made a choice about something that is theirs. Just like when CBS wants to show a Samuel L. Jackson movie, they make the choice, okay, we're going to put this on our network, but we're going to bleep out some things because it's not appropriate for the airways like that. So we're going to change it. Disney just went, look, it's our property. We want to have it on Disney Plus. And we choose that on Disney Plus, we want it to be basically really family friendly. That's our choice. The government's not making us do that. It's our choice. And we choose to put it on this network, that we choose to make it really family friendly. And to fit into that, we choose that when we air this movie that is ours and we own, to CGI some hair over a bare ass. That's their choice. Again, you said look up the definition. Here's the definition. Disney was not suppressed. Disney was not prohibited by anybody. It's just a freedom of choice that they chose for themselves. It's not censorship. You can play semantics all you want. You can play semantics all you want. The bottom line is, by definition, it is not censorship. It's their own property on their own network with rules that they themselves set up for themselves. That is the complete antithesis of censorship. So I got to disagree with you on that one, Alpha. And by your own words, go look up the definition. And by the definition clearly states that what's happening here is not censorship. It doesn't mean we have to agree with Disney's move. Again, I'm not even sure I agree with the move, but I have no problem with it. It's like, okay, well, it's your movie, your choice, your network with your own rules. Yeah, if you want to do it that way, you do it that way. That's your choice. Just like I don't like George Lucas's changes to Star Wars with the special editions. I don't like those changes, but I have no problem with it because when he did it, it was his movie. He could do whatever he wants with his movie when it was his at the time. So yeah, I got to disagree with you, Alpha, by your own argument here. By your own argument. It's clearly shows that this isn't censorship. Anyway, this is a great debate that I'm sure will rage amongst us as film fans for a very long time, but that's just how I see it. Anyway, let's move on here. Let's see. Angel Silva writes, consistency with Disney Plus, you can see male butt, but no, only if you're talking about Hulk. But again, that's a CGI animated character. And like we've made arguments before, like in Violence, you can have Transformers cut the heads off of other Transformers. They're CGI mythical animated characters. That's different than showing two human being actors and one slicing off and decapitating the other's head. They are treated different. Now, whether they should be treated differently or not, that can be an item for debate. But the fact of the matter is, in our culture, we do treat those things differently. You can show a CGI animated alien or mythological creature getting their face blown off. That's one thing, but you can't really do that with a human being. That's probably how they looked at here. Again, it's an issue of consistency, maybe, but again, it's just not an issue of censorship. That's all. All right. Philly G writes, for Splash, do you think it was worth the time and money to add the hair instead of just putting it on Hulu, forgetting the issue of censorship? Yeah, I do. Because I think a Splash, look, Splash is 99.9% a very family-friendly film. And it is a film minus the bare ass shot that fits in perfectly with what Disney Plus is. And that's a branding decision, and branding decisions are very important. And if the only thing they needed to do was get one CGI artist for a weekend to CGI some longer hair, it doesn't even look all that good. The CGI is not even all that good. So they didn't spend a lot of money on it. If all they had to do to put it on the brand that they felt that fit with better, that's higher level thinking than just dump it on Hulu. But that's not the brand identification they want with Splash. They feel it's more of a Disney Plus film. And if the only thing they had to do was CGI some long hair over her ass instead of cutting a scene out or anything like that, yeah, no. That's where you put it is a much bigger issue than if you just CGI some longer hair over the ass. Because believe me, they didn't spend much money on it because that CGI doesn't look all that good. I guarantee you they pulled a couple of interns at the visual effects department and said, here, do this over the weekend. And they just did it over the weekend because clearly they didn't have their top talent. Let's just say that. They clearly did not have their top talent CGIing the hair over the butt, because it clearly doesn't look all that great. Anyway. Stubble McShave writes, Disney Plus should have a kids setting with altered versions. I disagree. That's not what Disney wants. It to be a very straightforward, simple thing. On Disney Plus, it's family friendly. That's it, period. And that's important branding. That's important branding for families. To know that if it's on Disney Plus, we can sit down and let our kids watch it. We can sit down and watch it ourselves and have no problem. The whole idea of introducing different tiers to Disney Plus, that's why they have other things like a Hulu and whatever. So if there's something they need to put in a adult restriction, well, then you just put that on Hulu. Otherwise, you put it on Disney Plus. And if you got a movie like Splash, where all you got to do to make it fit into that is put some extra hair to cover a bare ass that doesn't even do anything for the movie, then go ahead and do it. So anyway, again, I'm not even sure I like it. I just know that I have no problem with it. All right, Jesse writes, I feel that one side of the censorship issue is some fans tend to feel an ownership of movies they love. So when someone comes in and makes changes, it might feel like censorship to them. I don't disagree with you, Jesse. I think that's true. Listen, because I feel that way sometimes, right? I was talking a little bit about the George Lucas situation with the special edition of the Star Wars films, right? You're damn right. I, as a fan, feel... and unjustified, but I feel a sense of ownership over Star Wars. I think a lot of my fellow fans do. We're not right to do so. We do not own Star Wars, but I think me and a lot of my fellow Star Wars fans, we feel a sense of ownership over it a little bit. And so when the special editions came out, and I did not like 90% of the changes that they made, yeah, I get a little bit more emotionally invested in it. It's like, you shouldn't have done that. You censored the movies. Well, they didn't censor the movies, but that's how I kind of felt at first. So I don't think you're wrong, Jesse. I think sometimes and I know I'm guilty of this personally, sometimes we just let our initial unhappiness with a situation, we confuse that with a different issue. So I think there's some people that's like, I love Splash and I don't want it to be touched. And I can understand that sentiment. I felt that way about Star Wars. I love Splash and I don't want it to be touched. And so our anger about it being touched, we confuse with other issues, censorship, whatever, when it's clearly not censorship. But I can relate because I've done the exact same thing. I've done the exact same thing. And I think it's understandable. All right. Next up, Kenneth Dowling writes, Hi, John. Hope all is well. All is well, Kenneth. Thanks for asking. Joss Whedon directing a Fantastic Four movie would be a good call. He did a great job on making Avengers. I think, well, no, he did a masterful job. Make no mistake about it. There is no MCU if that movie failed. If Avengers, the first time out of the gate, trying to assemble all these big main characters in one big massive crossover movie, if that didn't crush it, the MCU today would not be what it is. Just make no mistake about it. He did a great job of making Avengers, and I think Ultron is underrated. Both Robert and I agree. The more we watch Age of Ultron, the more and more we're appreciating it. It's actually a really good movie. I was hoping for John Krasinski or Brad Bird, but this works fine for me. I need to see... Listen, I love what John Krasinski did on Quiet Place, but I need to see him do something different before I'm ready to trust him with an MCU movie. I don't know, like Kevin Feige says, a good storyteller is a good storyteller. Maybe that's the case here. I really want Peyton Reed. I think Peyton Reed would be a tremendous fit, and I actually think there's a possibility they introduce the Fantastic Four in Ant-Man 3, so maybe Peyton Reed would be a good fit. Brad Bird would also be a good choice, but let's face it, a lot of people just want Brad Bird because he did another movie that was kind of like Fantastic Four in The Incredibles, which is understandable too. But I agree. Listen, I would not prefer Joss Whedon over like a Peyton Reed. I'm just saying that if they announced that Joss Whedon was directing Fantastic Four, that's incredible news. Joss Whedon, you can make an argument, is responsible for comic book movies being the biggest genre in the world right now because it's all because of Avengers. He's so good, Kevin Feige kept flying him into other MCU movies to just do rewrites on certain pages, try to punch up pages and stuff like that on vastly different movies until he finally burned out. And they had some sort of falling out, but clearly they're all back together singing Kumbaya again. So, again, I'm not saying Joss Whedon would be my pick, but he's one of those directors that if they named him as the director, I'd be perfectly happy with it. I think it would be tremendous. I think it would be absolutely tremendous. Anyway, let's see. Renee Peralta writes, Have you seen the film The Miracle in Cell 7 on Netflix? If you did, what's your opinion? No, but I've had like 5 or 6 people in the last month bring it up. And I know it's a remake based on another foreign film of the same name. So no, I have not seen it, but I've had a number of people tell me I should check it out, and I will at some point because I'm hearing nothing but good things about it. All right. Samir Tesfaye writes, 67% face slap. Really, guys? Wow. Educate yourselves on what censorship actually is. Hashtag fail. Hashtag on shot first. Hashtag love Disney Plus. Hashtag family. Hashtag love the show. Hashtag enough with the hashtags. Hashtag bye-bye. But yeah, listen. So what he's referring to is on the John Campea Show today, I had put up a poll asking, we put up a question of the day most days. And I asked, hey guys, with this Disney situation, do you consider it perfectly fine? Or like with them CGIing hair over her ass so you don't have any nudity. Do you consider that fine? Or do you consider it a little inappropriate? Do you consider inappropriate censorship? And I thought it would be 90% would say it's censorship. I was actually surprised. It was only about 2/3. So it was about 66% to 33%, somewhere in that neighborhood. But yeah, listen, again, I think you got to understand. Like, listen, you know what I think? It's not censorship. By every definition, it's not censorship. You have to make up a new way of looking at it to force it to look like censorship. It's simply not censorship. But that doesn't mean you have to like it. That doesn't mean I have to like it. And I think some people, again, I know I've done this. I think some people are like, yeah, I don't like this. I'm saying it's inappropriate censorship. Well, it's not inappropriate censorship, but it doesn't mean we have to like it. And I think you got to cut some people some slack there, because I think a lot of it is just, they just don't like the move. They're just, in principle, they don't like the idea of, I think for a lot of people, it's not even censorship. I think for a lot of people, it's just the more philosophical issue of, is it okay to change art later on? Is it okay to change art later on? And I think there's good arguments to be had there. I think there's good debates to be had there. But I think for most people, it's not even an issue of censorship. I think it's just that for them, it's that they don't like this idea. And so they just voted a certain way. But I mean, hey, listen, that's the great thing about being film fans. We all have different opinions, right? Okay, thanks for writing that in. All right, Kenneth Dowling writes, I want to give a shout out to Erin. I'll make sure I pass this along to her. I always enjoy your opinions on the show. I find you intelligent, kind, and very beautiful. No flirting. Wishing you continued success in your career. She's great. I have been a fan of Erin as long as I've been a friend of Erin. Erin and I have been friends now for over 10 years. I absolutely adore her. She's got a great movie coming out. That production got halted because of the coronavirus thing, but she's got a part in a really big movie coming out with a big A-list star that I don't think she's publicly announced yet. Maybe she has, but I don't think she has. Anyway, she was literally getting ready to go and shoot the day they shut down production. Her first day of shooting was going to be the day they shut down production. So looking forward to her getting back in there. And yeah, she is great and I enjoy her. So thank you for the kind words, Kenneth. And I'll make sure I pass that along to her as well. All right. Wolf Cool writes, where's Wolf Cool? There he is. John, thoughts on how Jake Gyllenhaal almost replaced Toby in Spider-Man 2? I've heard about this, but I mean, I don't know what thoughts there are to have. Every movie has one role almost went to another actor. Almost every movie, one actor almost had the role too, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that have that. If Jake Gyllenhaal had ended up being Spider-Man, he would have done a great job because he's a great actor. I think in hindsight, I'm glad it was Tobey Maguire, but if it had turned out to be Jake Gyllenhaal, it's not like amazing. It's not like Spider-Man 2 would have gone from being one of the greatest comic book films of all time to being a crappy movie. Not at all. Jake Gyllenhaal would have done a great job, but I think in hindsight, I'm also very happy that Tobey Maguire got the role. All right, John Ashford writes, hello, John and Erin. Love Erin for always repping Detroit. She was one of the stars of Detroit 187, and she got very involved in the community there. She started a great charity there called Mittens for Detroit. She still has a tremendous love for the city of Detroit. She's always talking about Detroit, believe that. Any word on 50s crime movie filming in Detroit called Kill Switch? The only Kill Switch I'm aware of is a movie that came out in like 2016, 2017. It was this little straight to VOD thing with Dan Stevens, the guy from Downton Abbey and he's the star of Legion. He's the main guy in Legion. Dan Stevens. It's like this sci-fi thriller kind of thing. Really, really bad movie. That's the only Kill Switch I'm familiar with. So no, I am not familiar with whatever that movie is called, Kill Switch. But I'll tell you what, John, I will keep my eyes open and see if it comes along. All right, Samir writes, release the breakdance cut as $1,000 Patreon tier. No. That would have to be $100,000 Patreon tier. Just to be clear. It would have to minimum be $100,000 tier, and it would have to have at least 10 members of that tier. Then, and only then, will that be considered at all. All right, Corey Holzer writes, John, I am with you on Highlander. It was the first movie my wife and I watched when dating. We almost made the love song our wedding song. Dude, I'm telling you what, the Highlander, the first one with Christopher Lambert, Sean Connery, Clancy Brown, it's in my top 10 all-time favorite movies. And it's the one film on my list that, you know, people give me their top 10 lists. I'm like, oh, most of the time it's movies that aren't in my top 10. But I go, oh yeah, that's a great one. And that's a great one. Oh yeah, that's a good top 10 list. That's a good top 10 movie too. But for me, all my movies are like that until I get to Highlander. It's like, okay, yeah, Godfather, yeah, Lord of the Rings, yeah, Star Wars, yeah, Shawshank Redemption, okay, Highlander. I said, wait. Highlander? There can be only one Highlander? Yeah, everybody looks at me funny when I say Highlander, but I am unapologetic about it. I love that movie, and I'm glad you and your wife do too, Corey. All right, Carissa Singleton writes in, thank you for everything, John. Oh, thank you so much, Carissa. It's always nice when somebody wants to write in something just to be nice and supportive, so thank you for that, Carissa. All right, Anthony Lucalano writes, hashtag release the breakdance cut. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. All right, Royce Freeman writes, I love the 8-hour marathon you did. It was really more 7. I was glad to help. When will you be able to do the video with the rest of the questions? The videos there are 4 of them, by the way. It took 4 videos to do the rest of the questions, and Robert Meyer Burnett did all of them. And they are now done. And they're probably going to start getting released today. Today's when they'll probably start getting released. So either today or tomorrow, but they'll all be up by the weekend. So all of them will be up by the weekend. So thank you, Royce, for being a part of that. Thank you for contributing to it. And thank you for asking, because they will all be up here in the next day or two. All right, Nicholas Sergi also writes, as the final question there, RIP Brian Dennehy. And yeah, I read about this once the show was done. And got to tell you, I am way bummed. I love Brian Dennehy. I mean, everything from, First Blood, the first Rambo movie, to just about everything else. He's one of the most recognizable and prolific and awesome character actors in the history of Hollywood. Brian Dennehy was a treasure. And I was really sucks. I won't go into it too much because Robert and I will definitely be talking about the passing of Brian Dennehy on tomorrow's John Campea Show. So make sure you tune in for that. But yeah, it was a tremendous bummer to hear about that. Real. But dude was 81 years old. Terrific career. He was recently on Blacklist, one of the shows that I watch. He was recently on Blacklist, and he was a recurring character on that every once in a while, occasional recurring character. But yeah, it was really bummed to hear about that. Okay, guys, that will do it for this installment of the companion video. We're now all cut up, guys. Don't forget, make sure you come back and join us tomorrow for the live stream of the John Campea Show with me and Robert Meyer Burnett. And obviously the Brian Dennehy situation is one we're going to be talking about as well. Hope you guys are able to come and join us for that. Guys, special thank you to all of you who sent in questions, not just because you gave us great fun things to talk about, but also when you send all those questions, you're actually supporting the channel and all of us here on the John Campea YouTube channel. Thank you very much for that. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for now. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.